My coworker pointed the finger at me. I kept quiet, waiting for the truth to surface. A week later, HR called us in, and what followed stunned the entire office. I had no clue what was going on. Not at first. Then came the email. Subject line, urgent review, project error. It was from Diane in upper management, the kind of person who only ever emailed you when something was wrong. I opened it, and there it was. One paragraph, cold and blunt, saying I had made a critical error in the numbers submitted for the quarterly report. It claimed my mistake had nearly cost the company a major client. And it ended with, please prepare a written explanation before today's end-of-day meeting. I froze. See, that report was airtight when I sent it in. I had double-checked everything. Numbers, formatting, even the backup spreadsheets. I stayed late 2 nights in a row getting it right. I knew. There was no way that mistake came from me. But the email did not sound like a question. It sounded like a verdict. I leaned back in my chair and stared at my screen, trying to breathe through the rising panic. This was not some tiny typo. This was the kind of thing people get fired for. My hands felt clammy, and my stomach twisted like it was folding in on itself. By lunchtime, whispers had already made their rounds. People were not confronting me directly, but I could feel the shift. Fewer people making eye contact. Conversation stopping when I walked by. I caught one guy from sales, Dean, muttering something like, "That's what happens when you move too fast," as I passed the break room. And then it clicked. Cameron. He sat 3 desks down from me. Always had a chip on his shoulder. He was decent at his job, but not the kind of guy who could stand someone doing better than him. We had butted heads before. Nothing too serious, just tension. He once made a joke in a team meeting about me being management's pet when my project got featured in the newsletter. I laughed it off, but I never forgot it. Now, all signs pointed in one direction. I pulled up the shared file history. The report had been edited after I submitted it. Just once. By Cameron. I felt my pulse spike. There it was. Proof that someone else had touched the file. But still, I hesitated. Do I march into that meeting and throw Cameron under the bus? Or do I sit tight, stay calm, and trust the truth to surface on its own? I wanted to believe that being honest would protect me. But deep down, something told me this was not going away quietly. And I had no idea what kind of damage was already done. What I did next, that set everything in motion. Cameron and I started on the same day. I still remember it clear as yesterday. Orientation room, crappy pastries on the table, a projector humming loud enough to drown out small talk. He had that smug, casual confidence, like he already knew he belonged. Me? I was just glad to be in the room. I had spent months scraping by after my last job folded under a merger, sending out resumes like prayer cards, hoping one would stick. When this place hired me, it felt like a second shot at stability. Cameron never needed that second shot. His uncle was friends with one of the directors, the kind of connection you do not ask too many questions about. Right out of the gate, he had access, meetings, mentorship, the kind of soft perks that were never listed in the job description. Still, I kept my head down, did the work, made good impressions, and over time, people started coming to me for answers instead of him. That did not sit well. The first real friction hit during a budgeting project last spring. We were on the same team, both tasked with drafting proposals for the same client. Mine got picked. His got picked apart. And after the meeting, he came up to me with this weird half smile and said, "Funny how yours got chosen, considering how close you are with Sharon." That was our boss. The implication hung in the air. I laughed it off, said something like, "She picked the numbers, not me," and walked away. But I knew right then, he did not see me as a teammate. He saw me as competition. From there, things got subtle. My name would be left off calendar invites unless someone else caught it. Files I updated mysteriously reverted to old versions. He would play dumb every time. Oh man, must have been a sync issue. But this was different. Changing that report, that crossed a line. I sat there in my cubicle, staring at the edit history, and felt this slow, bitter frustration crawl up my spine. It was not just the betrayal. It was the fact that management had seen that report and immediately assumed I was the one who screwed it up. No one asked questions. No one came to me privately. Just straight to an official email, implying I needed to explain myself. I kept thinking, why was I the one under fire when I had receipts? And then another thought crept in. What if this had been his plan all along? Sow enough doubt. Get close enough to one of my projects. And when the opportunity strikes, drop the grenade, walk away, and watch me burn. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I could forward the edit log to Diane. I could call Cameron out right now, drag him into this thing before he saw it coming. But part of me hesitated. What if they still sided with him? What if he had already laid the groundwork to make me look paranoid, vindictive, even guilty? I sat there, fists clenched, eyes locked on the screen, heart pounding. I had the truth. But would anyone believe it if I said it out loud? Just then, I got a ping. Calendar invite from Diane. Meeting moved to 2:30. Conference room B. Less than an hour to decide. Fight back, or play it safe. And the clock was already ticking. Conference room B had always felt like a pressure cooker. The walls were this weird beige color that made everything seem more tense, and the air always smelled faintly like burnt coffee. When I walked in, Diane was already there, neatly dressed as always, glasses perched on her nose, and a folder sitting on the table in front of her like it held the final judgment. Cameron walked in 30 seconds after me. Of course he did. He gave me this nod like we were just two colleagues in for a routine check-in. Like he had not just set me up to take the fall for something that could wreck my career. I sat down. Diane did not even look up right away. She opened the folder and started flipping through a printout of the report, her pen tapping against the margin. Then she looked at me and said it straight, no sugarcoating. There is a discrepancy between the client's expected numbers and what we submitted. The error appears to have originated in your spreadsheet. Cameron kept his eyes on the table. Not a word, not a glance. I swallowed hard and nodded slowly. May I ask when the version in question was pulled? She raised an eyebrow, maybe surprised I was not groveling yet. Last Thursday. Final copy submitted at 3:27 p.m. I took a deep breath. I submitted it at 3:05. The version at 3:27 was edited by Cameron. Her eyes did not flinch, but the tapping pen stopped. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on the table. I checked the file history this morning. I continued. I wanted to make sure I was not crazy. My version had the correct projections. The altered figures, the ones that cost the client confidence, were added 20 minutes later. Diane slowly turned to Cameron. That was the moment I thought I might see some guilt, maybe even fear. But no, he leaned forward, hands folded like he had been waiting for this exact moment. That is not how I remember it. My stomach dropped. He kept going. The file was having version conflicts. I was helping him with formatting. He asked me to take a look, and I assumed he had double-checked the final numbers. I did not touch any of the projections. If something changed, it was accidental. He said it calm, smooth, like a rehearsed script. The perfect balance of concern and denial. Diane turned back to me. Did you ask Cameron for help? I shook my head. Absolutely not. And even if I had, those numbers should not have been touched by anyone but me. We are talking about forecasts that steer a six-figure contract. This is not a formatting issue. Another pause. She closed the folder, took off her glasses, and looked between us. I will need both of you to submit a timeline of events. Everything you remember. And I am pulling the server logs. This kind of error cannot be brushed aside. I nodded, heart still hammering. Cameron gave a soft sigh, like he was the victim here. I walked out of that room on shaky legs, unsure if I had just saved myself or walked straight into the trap. Because the truth? Cameron was not working alone, and I was about to find out just how deep this went. The moment I stepped out of that meeting, I could feel something shift. Not with management. Not yet. But in the office. The hallway chatter got quieter when I passed. People were glancing over their monitors a little longer. Someone from marketing, Alyssa, I think, gave me this strange look like she wanted to say something but thought better of it. I sat back down at my desk and stared at my screen like it had answers. I knew Diane would pull the logs, but that could take days, maybe longer. Meanwhile, Cameron was already laying the groundwork for his version of the story. And the worst part? People seemed to believe it. That afternoon, I overheard two analysts whispering by the copier. One of them said, "Yeah, but he always looked a little overwhelmed, right? Like maybe he was not ready for that much responsibility." Overwhelmed. That word echoed through my skull. I had given up weekends for that report. Spent nights debugging formulas line by line, because I wanted it perfect. And now people were questioning whether I even belonged here? No, I was not going to let that stick. That is when I started digging. I remembered something Cameron said in passing a couple weeks earlier. Something about needing a favor from IT. Said it like a joke, but now it stuck in my head like a needle. I messaged Marcus in tech support. We were not close, but I had fixed a printer for him once when no one else would. That bought me just enough goodwill. I asked if he had seen any unusual access to the file server last Thursday. Said I was doing cleanup for a project handoff. Casual enough to not raise red flags. He hesitated at first, then pinged me back with a cryptic message. Funny timing. Someone requested off-hours permissions Wednesday night. Guess who? He did not say the name. He just sent a screenshot. It showed Cameron's ID requesting extended file access for the forecasting team directory, just hours before the final version was due. That hit like a jolt of electricity. He planned it. He went in after hours, got into the shared files, made the edits, and then tried to bury them under a formatting excuse. And now he was sitting there in his chair like he was bulletproof. But that screenshot? That was something. Still, I was not about to charge into Diane's office with it just yet. If Cameron was bold enough to tamper with financials, there was a chance he had someone backing him up, or someone looking the other way. And I needed to be sure. So I made a list. People who had worked closely with Cameron. People who had once trusted me and now seemed distant. And one name that kept coming up again and again. Travis. The golden boy. Team lead for business development. Always smiling, always charming. Always quick to defend Cameron. Something told me if I wanted the full picture, I had to start with him. Because I was not just fighting to clear my name anymore. I was peeling back layers of something much uglier. And what I was about to uncover, it went deeper than I ever expected. I waited until the end of the day before I made my move. Most of the office had cleared out, lights dimmed row by row like the place itself was winding down. But Travis was still there, his door cracked open, soft jazz playing from a speaker like it always was. He had this reputation, easy to talk to, always calm. The kind of guy who made every interaction feel like a networking opportunity. But I had learned the hard way that smooth talk does not mean clean hands. I knocked once and stepped inside. He looked up, smiled like nothing in the world could touch him. Hey, what's up? I played it light at first. Small talk. Just two guys catching up after a long day. But then I asked him something pointed. Do you remember who first flagged the mistake in that quarterly report? His smile faded just a little. I think it was Cameron. Why? I watched him closely. Just curious. The file was edited after I submitted it. Someone changed the numbers. Travis leaned back in his chair, hands folded over his stomach. He was thinking. Or stalling. That sounds like something IT should look into, he said finally, voice steady. I already did, I replied. And I know Cameron pulled after-hours access. Wednesday night, right before submission. He went quiet. Not shocked. Not confused. Just quiet. That told me everything. So I leaned in. Look, I am not trying to start a war. I just need to know what I am walking into. If you know something, anything, that could clear this up, now's the time. He tapped his pen against his desk. A rhythm. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, You were not supposed to get that project. I blinked. What? It was supposed to go to Cameron, he said. He had been positioning for it for weeks. Management was leaning that way until Sharon bumped you up. I felt like the air got sucked out of the room. You're telling me this was personal? Travis gave a half shrug. I am telling you there are expectations. Lines people are not supposed to cross. When you stepped over one, Cameron reacted. That word, expectations, sent a chill down my spine. So that was it. Not just jealousy. This was about status. Territory. Cameron thought I took something that belonged to him. And Travis? He did not stop it. Maybe he even let it happen. I left that office with my heart pounding and my fists clenched. The trap had been set long before I walked into it. The mistake was never accidental. It was a message. Stay in your lane, or get buried. But they underestimated me. Because I was not backing down. And the next morning, I made a copy of everything. By the time I walked in the next morning, I had not slept. Not really. I kept replaying everything in my head. Cameron's smug performance in the meeting, Travis practically admitting they had boxed me in on purpose, the way everyone else just stood back and watched. I had copies of the file history. I had the screenshot from Marcus showing Cameron's unauthorized access. But more than that, I had the truth. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I had no interest in playing it safe anymore. I did not go to Diane. I went to Sharon. She was my direct supervisor, and the only reason I had gotten the project in the first place. I knew if anyone would actually listen, really listen, it would be her. Her office door was open. She was typing something, focused. I stepped in, and she looked up, her face softening when she saw me. "I assume you heard about the report," I said, setting my folder down. She nodded. "They mentioned it in passing. Diane's been handling it." I opened the folder and slid the first printout forward, the server log showing Cameron's access time, then the file history, then the full timeline I wrote out the night before, and finally, the project brief with my original submission timestamped and untouched. She read in silence. The room was still. The only sound was the faint hum of the heater and the slow tap of her fingernail against her mug. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I had not seen on anyone's face all week. Anger. "Why did no one bring this to me?" she asked quietly. I told her about the meeting with Diane, about Cameron's excuses, about Travis. Her jaw clenched. "I am going to escalate this," she said. Today, that should have felt like a relief. But it didn't, because not even an hour later, the blowback started. Cameron must have sensed something was off. He started circling desks, talking to people he barely spoke to before. I saw him in the break room with Dean from sales, speaking low, glancing my way. Alyssa barely looked at me when I passed her desk. The whisper network had shifted again. Only this time, it was not suspicion. It was strategy. Cameron was trying to spin it again, paint me as the one stirring up drama, as if I was paranoid, vindictive, hard to work with. He was laying down damage control like it was his job, and for the moment, it was working. People were uneasy around me, like I was radioactive. That afternoon, my keycard failed at the parking gate. I had to buzz security to let me in. Small thing, but it shook me. I started wondering, how far would Cameron go to protect himself? Would he throw someone else under the bus? Would he lie again? Or was this whole place ready to sweep it under the rug to avoid embarrassment? Because even if the truth was on my side, that did not mean the system would be. And the worst part? I was starting to think someone higher up was helping him stay afloat. Someone I never expected. By Thursday, I was running on fumes. Coffee was no longer cutting it, and the paranoia had crept into every part of my day. Every glance felt loaded. Every silence, suspicious. I was on edge, constantly looking over my shoulder. Even during lunch, like I was expecting someone to tap me on the back and say, "Pack your things." But that was not what happened. Instead, I got a message. Not an email. A handwritten note, slipped under my keyboard while I was in the restroom. Just 4 words. Check the break room. At first, I thought it was a prank. But something about the handwriting felt familiar. Neat, all caps, with a little upward tilt at the end of each word. I had seen it before, on sticky notes taped to the IT desk. Marcus. So I went. The break room was empty. Microwave humming. Someone's leftover spaghetti sitting forgotten on the table. I glanced around, then spotted something tucked behind the vending machine. A USB drive. I pocketed it fast and left without touching my coffee. Back at my desk, I waited until no one was around. Then I plugged it into a spare laptop I had at home. No way I was risking company machines. What I found blew the lid off everything. There were screen captures from internal chat logs. Not mine. Cameron's. He had been messaging someone in compliance, Amber, asking how easily certain file changes could be scrubbed from audit logs. Phrasing it casually, like a theoretical question. There were also snippets of conversations with Travis, the two of them clearly venting about getting skipped over and how I was an outsider who got lucky once. Worse, there was one message from Cameron that said, if he takes the fall, maybe next time they'll think twice before fast-tracking someone just because he works late. And the final file? A snapshot of a spreadsheet draft. The numbers. The exact tampered version. Saved from Cameron's own cloud folder. Timestamped hours before he made the change to the master file. It was everything I needed. Not just to clear my name, but to expose how far this went. The next morning, I printed it all. Neat, labeled, organized. I sent it to HR, Diane, Sharon, and the legal department. I dropped the physical copy on Sharon's desk myself, locked in a folder. Then I waited. I knew there was going to be fallout. But what I did not expect was just how fast it came. At exactly 11:12 a.m., Cameron was called into a meeting. At 11:27 a.m., he walked past my desk, pale, silent, and no longer wearing his badge. By noon, the company-wide email went out. Due to a breach of professional conduct, Cameron Hayes' employment has been terminated effective immediately. Just like that. Gone. But that was not the real twist. The real twist came 2 hours later, when I found out Amber had been suspended too. And HR? They wanted to speak with Travis. Because it turned out, Cameron was not the only one rewriting the truth. That afternoon felt unreal. The news moved through the office like static. First came the silence, people just trying to process what had happened. Then the whispers returned, louder this time. But this time, I was not the target. Cameron was gone. Amber had been escorted out by security. And Travis? Travis was sweating. Literally. I saw him pacing outside Sharon's office, pulling at the collar of his dress shirt, phone clenched in his hand like it might save him. He kept checking the hallway, like he expected someone to walk up and arrest him. He was not far off. Sharon finally called him in. I only caught a glimpse before the door closed, but his face looked like someone who had just realized the house of cards was falling, and he was standing at the bottom. The meeting lasted nearly 40 minutes. When he walked out, he did not look at me. Not once. I found out later that he had been placed on administrative leave while they completed their internal investigation. HR had found traces of messages he deleted from Teams, stuff he thought would never resurface. But Marcus had recovered it. And what those logs showed? Proof he knew Cameron was altering files. Proof he encouraged it. And worse, proof he told him it would blow over if I kept my head down. That line hit harder than anything. Kept my head down. Like I was supposed to accept being thrown under the bus. Like I was supposed to swallow the fallout so they could stay in control. So Cameron could have his promotion. So Travis could keep his perfect little record. But not this time. Sharon pulled me into her office later that day. She looked different. Less composed than usual, like all the professional polish had cracked just enough to show how close this had come to tearing everything apart. I want to apologize, she said. We should have seen this sooner. You should never have been put in that position. I told her I appreciated it. But deep down, I was still angry. Not just at them, for letting it happen, but at myself, for almost letting it slide. For almost believing I had to stay silent. Because when you stay silent, people like Cameron win. People like Travis thrive. I walked out of that office with a strange feeling. Not triumph. Just release. It was over. But the next part? That came days later, when Diane pulled me aside and asked if I had a minute. Because apparently, the company had one more surprise in store for me. When Diane called me into her office that Friday morning, I honestly thought it was just going to be a final wrap-up. Maybe some HR formality. Maybe a reminder to keep things confidential. I was wrong. She closed the door behind me and gestured toward the chair. Her tone was different. No sharp edges, no formalities. Just quiet focus. I wanted to speak with you directly, she said, folding her hands. About what happened, and about what comes next. She paused, like she was choosing her words carefully. Your response to the situation showed a level of integrity and patience that most people would not have managed under that pressure. I sat there, unsure where this was going. We want you to step into a new role, she said. Lead analyst. Your name came up immediately when we started talking about reshaping the team. I blinked. For a second, I actually thought I misheard her. You mean promote me? I asked. She nodded. It is not just a title. You would be heading your own team. The project you handled under fire? That client signed an extension. They were impressed. Turns out they noticed the inconsistencies before we did, but they saw how you handled the correction. Quiet. Clean. Professional. I did not respond right away, because something strange was happening in my chest. Not pride. Not satisfaction. Just disbelief. I had spent the past week thinking my job was hanging by a thread. Watching people turn their backs on me. Seeing whispers twist into suspicion. And now, they wanted to reward me. But then Diane said something that stuck with me longer than anything else. Let this be a reminder, she said. It only takes one dishonest act to destroy a reputation, but it takes 100 honest ones to build trust. I left her office with the offer letter in my hand. Lead analyst. Better pay. A private office. Autonomy. I should have felt triumphant. But the truth? I just felt tired. Because I had seen how fast things could turn. How easily people could smile at you one day and bury you the next. And most of all, how one man's insecurity, one petty, calculated decision, nearly derailed everything I had worked for. I took the weekend to think. Not because I doubted my qualifications, but because I needed to ask myself one hard question. Did I still want to be part of a place that let this happen? I came back Monday with my decision. I took the promotion. Not because I wanted to climb the ladder faster or prove a point, but because I realized something during all of this. I was never going to be respected until I forced the truth into the light. Letting people like Cameron win? That would have meant every late night, every weekend I stayed in to double-check my work, every time I tried to do things the right way. It would all mean nothing. And I was done letting things mean nothing. The office felt different now. Some folks were warmer. A few apologized. Others stayed distant. Embarrassed, probably, that they bought into Cameron's version of things so easily. I didn't blame them. Not entirely. That is how office culture works when trust is paper-thin and people are more afraid of being the next target than standing up for the truth. I moved into my new office on the 3rd floor. No big celebration. Just a box of my things, a fresh notepad, and a silent promise to myself that if I ever saw something like this happen again, to anyone else, I would not stay quiet. I would not hesitate. But the thing I still think about the most, it is how fragile reputation is. How one lie, just one, nearly destroyed me. Cameron did not just lose his job. He lost his credibility. Word got out fast. Corporate burned the bridge and lit up the sky with warnings for every team in the building. Amber? She's gone too. Turned out she had covered for a lot more than we knew. Travis tried to save face, but there is only so much a man can recover from when the people below him stop trusting his judgment. I heard he resigned quietly a week later. Last I checked, his desk was cleared out, nameplate gone. All of it. Every power play, every smug lie, every backdoor message. It fell apart in a matter of days. Just like that. Now, when I pass Cameron's old desk, I do not feel proud. I feel cautious. Because this place, any place, it can shift on you in a heartbeat. But the thing that stayed with me the most, the lesson I would never forget, was this. Trust is slow to build. But once broken, it crashes faster than truth can catch up. And sometimes, it does catch up. It caught up to Cameron. It caught up to Travis. And for me, it reminded me that silence is the favorite tool of the dishonest. They count on it, and they never expect you to speak up. So if you are ever in the spot I was in, blamed, doubted, cornered, do not fold. Do not flinch. Because truth, it takes time. But when it hits like a wrecking ball.